Trump folds on Nordstream 2 because, well, logic. Since its first announcement, I have been convinced the Nord Stream 2 pipeline would be built. I have followed every twist of the story from my days writing for Newsmax. And the reason for my confidence can be summed up in one word: money. Nord Stream 2 simply makes too much economic sense for any amount of political whining from the US and Poland to stop it. Poland has no power within the European Union. Germany does. And while I'm no fan of Angela Merkel getting another political weapon to hold over the heads of the Poles, their attempt to derail the project were always going to end in tears for them. And so now, Poland and the US cried a lot of crocodile tears recently when President Trump finally acceded to reality and ended the threat of sanctioning 5 of the biggest oil majors in the world over doing business with Gazprom over Nord Stream 2. Nord Stream 2's investors are Uniper, OMV, Wintershall, Royal Dutch Shell, and Eni. Go look them up. They're enormous. So after all the permits were issued and construction begun, the only thing that could stop Nord Stream from happening was these 5 companies folding to U.S. pressure and backing out of the project by calling in their loans to Gazprom. And when they were unwilling to do that, Trump had to fold because you can't cut these companies out of the Western banking system and starve them for dollars and euros without extreme dislocation in oil prices and global trade. Bluff called. Nord Stream 2 holding aces. Trump holding 2-7 offsuit. The big loser here is Poland, unless they can come down off their Russophobic high horse. Why is Nord Stream 2 so important to Poland? Because it forces Poland into choosing between 2 things the current ruling Law and Justice Party doesn't like. The first is renegotiating a gas transit deal with Gazprom through Ukrainian pipelines without as much leverage. The current agreement expires at the end of 2019. If they reject the first option, then they are at the mercy of buying gas from Nord Stream 2, putting them politically in the hands of Germany. Angela Merkel is angry with Poland for trying to assert its sovereignty, having begun Article 7 proceedings over their law putting Supreme Court justices under review from the legislature, which the EU has termed a violation of its pledge to protect human rights. And so, expect Poland to now open up talks with Gazprom to renegotiate a new deal or be stupid and buy LNG from the US at 2 to 3 times the price they can get it from Gazprom. From the U.S. side of the equation, there are a few things in this life that Donald Trump and Barack Obama agree upon, and stopping Nord Stream 2 was one of them. This, of course, tells you that this opposition is coming from somewhere a lot higher than the presidency. U.S. and British foreign policy has been obsessed for more than 100 years with stopping the natural alliance between Germany's industrial base and Russia's vast tracts of natural resources, as well as Russia's own science and engineering prowess. These 2 countries cannot, in any version of a unipolar world dominated by the Davos crowd, to be allowed to form an economic, no less political alliance, because the level of coordination and economic prosperity works directly against their goals of lowering everyone's expectations for what humans can accomplish. That is the greatest source of their power: the complacency of accepting low expectations. So Donald Trump finally folding on Nord Stream 2 is yet another example of the limits of what power the U.S. has and of its threats. When he denounced the project, he said, "I never thought it was appropriate. I think it's ridiculous, and I think it's certainly a very bad thing for the people of Germany. And I've said this very loud and clear." But notice he never said why. Because there is no downside for Germany. That's the point. Russian pipe gas is simply cheaper and more reliable than LNG produced more than 3,000 miles away. The downside is for the U.S. It begins the process of Germany and Russia reestablishing stronger economic ties, cut in half by the 2014 sanctions over Crimea. It keeps Merkel in power a little while longer, having stood up to the bully Trump and showing some German independence. And this is something she sorely needs right now, coming into regional elections in October. More importantly, this gas will be paid for in euros, not dollars. And this further undermines the effectiveness of U.S. sanctions, as Gazprom will have a steady supply of euros to pay back its investors and diversify Russia's currency reserves. There is no way for U.S. LNG supplies to be competitive in Europe without massive artificial barriers to entry for Russian gas. And even if Nord Stream 2 was somehow stopped by the U.S., Russia's massive Yamal LNG facility on the Baltic Sea would still outcompete U.S. LNG from Chenier's terminal in Louisiana. Location, location, location. We saw this last winter when vicious cold snaps forced a hostile Britain to buy a few tankers of Yamal LNG from Novatek to keep its citizens from freezing. With the planet cooling rapidly, expect this source of spot demand to Europe to increase. And this is why Russia also benefits from Poland building an LNG terminal, because don't think for a second the Poles will suffer extreme cold because Andrzej Duda hates Russians. That's just fun right there. But for Germany and the EU as a whole, more cheap energy is the path to remaining somewhat relevant in the global economy. With Germany ending the use of nuclear power, it needs the type of energy Nord Stream 2 supplies. In fact, Germany will eventually need Nord Stream 3. Each intervention by the U.S. or one of its satraps, and Poland certainly fills that bill, to block any further business between Russia and Europe, but especially Germany, keeps the world on edge and inches us closer to a military confrontation, while open trade and travel moves us farther away from that outcome. And anyone who argues otherwise is simply talking their book. They profit from war and tension. They profit from manipulating markets and, in effect, stealing the wealth someone else created. So this is not to say that Nord Stream 2 is some kind of messianic gift from the gods or anything. It is the result of massive interventions into the free markets for energy, born of necessity in a world governed by nation states far more powerful than they have any right to be, because of control of the issuance of money and the rent-seeking behavior of people who most benefit from the creation of endless supplies of that money. But that said, in the current state of things, rapprochement between Germany and Russia via projects like Nord Stream 2 points us towards a future without such nonsense. Now, I said points, not achieves. It's a beginning, not an end. Lost in all of this discussion about European energy security is the fact that even at the height of the Cold War, the USSR never once shut off gas supplies to its enemies. And under Putin, that fact remains. So how's that for an inconvenient truth?